Hi, everybody. Thank you, Noah, for having me. My name is Zan. I'm one of the co-founders of Urban Dessert Lab. We are an elevated, experiential, plant-based dessert brand. We opened up our first location in New York City, and we recently expanded to West Hollywood in that location to open up this past February. So very happy to be here.
Oh, my good. This is really good, by the way.
Yes, I'm so glad.
Murder Bra. My name's Nick. I know some of you, and nice to meet the ones I don't know. And hopefully we get to shake hands later. Probably know me from Monty's, or Eat Drink Vegan, or Vegan Beer and Food Festival, or Vegan Beer Fest if you go way back to the Roxy, or Nick's that sadly closed recently. Yes, agree. And the pizza, we gotta do a pop-up.
Yeah.
And then I think I live half of life as a plant-based vegapreneur.
Yeah.
Is that right?
There you go.
And then my other half, well, my whole life is being a dad and a husband, but besides those two things.
He's the dad on the panel.
Yeah. I live in the festival space, which is a really fun place to be, because you get to work with a lot of really cool businesses and help lift them up, and artists. I run our festivals over at Golden Voice, Coachella, Stagecoach, Cool World, Camp Fognaw, and others. And it's just a really fun place to be, because you get to work with a lot of interesting people. So thanks for having me.
Of course, thank you for being here. All right, let's jump right in. Zen, maybe you can start. Why Urban Dessert Lab? Like, what led you to it, and why are you building it? And feel free to take a couple minutes to just riff.
So, as many of you probably know, there's a high rate of lactose intolerance globally. The African American community is particularly high, also in the Asian community. And dairy is just inflammatory. But many of us did not grow up in a plant-based or vegan household. So we grew up on ice cream or pizza or nostalgic foods that we love. And then as you transition as an adult and you realize how something's going to agree with your body, it's hard to leave behind those foods that you love. It might also be hard that you might be the only one who could be transitioning, and you have family members or friends. Food is a large part of food is community, and it's difficult if your group all can't go to the same restaurant or food establishment. So that was a large part of the reasoning behind Urban Dessert Lab. I started with my sister. Her background's in nutrition and metabolism, and we noticed that the plant-based ice cream options weren't that great. Either they were coconut-based, and if you're not a fan of coconut, that's difficult because it has a very strong, overpowering flavor. Or they were nut-based, and if you have a nut allergy, you can't consume those. So we settled on an oat. We love the neutral base of the oat, and we were able to develop our own proprietary formula. So we started with that, doing soft serve. We branded ourselves as the world's first Oat-Milk soft serve shop because we couldn't find anywhere globally that was focusing on just oat-milk ice cream. And we've expanded since then. So we did soft serve, then we expanded to hard scoop, and now we've expanded to other plant-based items. So croissants, cookies, cakes. So that's kind of our trajectory into the space.
Beautiful. And what were you doing before?
So we were in grad school. My sister was studying nutrition and metabolism. I have a background in education and law, but entrepreneurship was something that we were always interested in, and our mom would buy us books about entrepreneurship or building a small business when you were younger. And I think it's just something that's interesting to us, being able to cultivate in something and see it grow, and just being a builder. That's just an exciting process to watch and be a part of. So
beautiful. Nick, I'm going to ask you the same question, which is why? Why are you doing what you're doing? And for you specifically, you've got Nick's, unfortunately,
Right.
closed. And just like, how did you get into?
I became vegan 25 plus years ago, and it was a lonely place. You definitely didn't want to go to the supermarket. And I was learning. We were talking earlier. I became vegan because a friend of mine was sick, and so I just, in a support way that I was there for my friend, and I was like, I'll do this with you. And at the end of the 2 weeks, he hit the street dog cart, and I was like, I'm good. I'm going to stay in this kind of vegetarian space and vegan. And it, over the 10 years, you learn, and you're like, oh, I didn't know that had that in it, and that in it, and that in it. And so I got together with a group of friends, Quarry Girl, who some of you might know, who was like the OG veg out, and another friend, well, we're not so friendly anymore, Tony from Golden Road, and we like to drink beer and hang out and eat and talk about food, and we just thought, what if we made a space for that? And so I have the Roxy up on Sunset, and we have a parking lot in the back, and I said, why don't we throw a party? And we invited Seabirds and Doomies and the French Fry Truck, which doesn't exist anymore, and we had Carl Strauss and like 2 other breweries and 200 people, and it was like one of the greatest days of all time. And then that just grew into 400 people the next year, and 8 and 12, and eventually 10,000 people were coming to the Rose Bowl, and we were supporting so many different vegan businesses and creating a space that was, I think a lot of us have gone to veg fests, and why you're there. You are there, similar while we're here, because we're a core and we're in it, but to grow it, you need to create environments that anybody can step into. And so Eat Drink Vegan really did that. It created an environment that you could bring your friend, and they were there for the beer, and then someone slipped them a burger, and they were like, oh, that thing's really good. And so I think all the things from that kind of, they all grew from that same kind of thought process. Monty's, obviously, with my partner Bill, and just was a burger place, and that's all it is. It's like, it's not the greatest burger. I would say it's a good burger, and milkshakes and fries, and then and tots, and same with Nick's. Nick's was a place that you could go on a date or bring your best friend or celebrate your birthday, and whoever came, there was always something there for them, and they didn't really question why they were there. So I think I've just been trying to create environments where people can transition without a push. I think it's important for others to push. That's just not the space that I want to be in.
Thank you for sharing. All right, let's jump in sort of on the state of restaurants right now. We can talk specifically on vegan restaurants. Either of you can kind of talk about it, but how are things going, and what are you seeing? And what are some of the challenges that you're facing and fellow restaurateurs are?
I'm going to let you start, because new business, so you might have a little more rosy view of things.
Here comes the rosy view.
My view is not rosy. I guess I could say it's hopeful. Is that fair to say? Maybe I should give a little bit more of our backstory. So we started in Brooklyn in the summer of 2019. At a food hall. We started small. We didn't know anybody in the space. It was just my sister and I. We're going to try this out. And the feedback was so overwhelmingly positive, and the community was great. We're like, we need to expand. So we expanded to a brick and mortar space in the Lower East Side in February of 2020, which obviously was right before the pandemic. So our growth has been pandemic, or I guess a little bit pre-pandemic, pandemic, and then post-pandemic. So like there are no roses over here. It is grit and grind. And in terms of like the state and like what the future looks like, it is such a difficult road. I think that it's great that there are more plant-based options. Like even if it's not a fully vegan restaurant, the fact that there are more mainstream restaurants introducing plant-based options on their menu, I think is wonderful. But I think it is difficult to sustain a business that only has plant-based ingredients, not because it's something that should scare people away, but when people see the word vegan, if you're not vegan or plant-based, that seems like a dirty word to them at times. And I agree with Nick. It's like I think we really have to focus on the messaging, making people feel welcome in the space. We don't use vegan when we advertise our brand. Obviously, when people come in, we're 100% plant-based, but it's not something we're like shouting from the rooftops because we want people to come in and say, this is a good dessert. It's great for them to also say this is a good plant-based dessert, but this is a good dessert. And then as a plus, it also happens to be plant-based. I think one of the other difficulties is just rising food costs that every restaurant struggles with, particularly when you're dealing with like a plant-based ingredient. Those are higher. Trying to figure out how to balance that and not pass that on to your customers is a challenge. So honestly, it's something that we're just trying to figure out as we go along. That's the answer. We don't know the answers.
We had roses, they're just dead right now. For Monty's, we opened prior to the pandemic, not too long before, and we were expanding going into the pandemic, so that created its own challenges because we had kind of created a executive admin staff and hired on a bunch of people and had leases ready to go, and then that kind of set us back. I think you have to be passionate. It's not we're here for business, and if you were to ask me, should this group get into the restaurant business, I'd probably say no. As a money-making venture, it doesn't mean it can't happen. It doesn't mean there's not going to be breakthroughs, but it's a really hard time in I would say Los Angeles, but I'm sure New York's tough too. The cost of things, rent, people's eating habits have changed. We learned a lot about food, vegan or not vegan, during the pandemic. A lot of people learned how to cook. They learned how to go to the supermarket. They learned how to go to farmers markets. They started caring about what's in their food. So they also moved to delivery services like Postmates and DoorDash, which really changed the landscape of what we do in terms of going out or how we spend my money. Our money, we would, it's interesting that we'll spend 30% more on a burger, but then we won't go to a restaurant. Then we'll go to a restaurant and look at the menu and go, wow, these menu prices are crazy. It's like, you just bought a Carl's Jr. burger for $24, but then you're going to go to this place and complain. So that's changed it too. Monty's, we spent 2 years, we're on our 5th year, going on our 6th year. We spent 2 years holding on because there was a line of 150 people out the door and nobody had got their hands on Impossible yet, or Impossible 2.0, and it was just crazy. And then we spent 2 years trying to restructure and get costs under control and actually create a business. And then I would say the last year has been going back to what we're good at in terms of branding, putting more effort into social, billboards, community events, dog adoptions. We're doing couple skateboarding contest events. So just getting back to, I think, what we're used to. But all businesses are going to kind of have an ebb and flow. I think we both experienced something with the pandemic, and that was not normal, and there's not a lot of people to turn and say how to get through this or what do. You just get through it. So I think things in terms of the pandemic are normalizing. I think we just kind of woke up to a new environment to have a business in.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I hear from all the restaurateurs I speak to. You mentioned the word vegan is a dirty word, and I don't think either of your businesses scream vegan. How do you think we normalize it, or do we just avoid it?
I think the messaging just needs to be one of like a welcome environment. I don't think we need to avoid it because I am not a fan or proponent of hiding something. I feel like I don't want to hide it because it's not a bad thing. It's a wonderful thing that I think people should experience. But I do think you have to acknowledge that, like, past experiences with vegan food has not always been the best. Like, my past experience with vegan food, sometimes you eat something and it's just not great. It's like the texture is not there or the taste, and vegan food has come a long way. It's just taking time to get there, and I think we just have to acknowledge that people are skeptical of it. And I think when you're dealing with a skeptic, the best way to invite them into this world is not to beat them over the head with a particular message or phrasing. So like I said, it's like, this is a good dessert. It also happens to be plant-based, and I think that makes it easier for them to say like, oh, let me try something else. And it's like, people have been eating vegan food since, forever. It's just the word vegan isn't on it. So if you even introduce people and say like, look, you eat this is vegan, and they're like, oh, okay. And then they're just more willing to try it. Actually, you just, again, I keep focusing on messaging because I just think that's so important, because if people are turned off by your message, they're not going to want to deal with it or deal with your brand.
Yeah, I think I have an interesting story. So a couple partners and I have a pizza place called Forever Pie, which doesn't have a brick and mortar, but it's at all the festivals we do. We stopped putting anything to do with, we just have the best pizza ever. That's what it says. It says Forever Pie, best pizza ever. At the bottom of the menu it says contains soy and wheat, and we sell a lot of pizza at Stagecoach. Not the most vegan friendly crowd. The amount of cowboys that came back and told us it was the greatest pizza they've ever had in their life. So it was an experiment. I think we were trying to, if you put best pizza ever and people walk by and they read that, they come and buy pizza. I think if it said the best vegan pizza ever, we would have sold 10% of what we did at the festivals. So it bothers me that I'm not being fully truthful. The other part is it's really good pizza. The allergens are there. It's good pizza. So it was an interesting experiment that we've done over the last 6 months. But it is in branding and the way you do it, and just make sure you're in anything you do or in food. So just make it delicious, and people will remember. And that's Nic's was a delicious restaurant. The pizza was delicious, and I think people came back regardless of it being plant-based or vegan, and wanted to get the pizza because it was just good.
Just to echo what Nic is saying, again, we don't blast vegan over our product, but one of the biggest compliments we get is when people have been to our store, repeat customers, like, this is my first time visiting. And we have signs in the store that say 100% plant-based, but people don't always read the signs in the signage in the store, and they're like, I had no idea this was vegan. And it was like, that's when we know we hit the nail on the head. It's like, as Nick said, it's like, it's just good food. It's good food and a hospitable environment. That's when we know we're doing things right.
Yeah. Not to make you feel better, but I feel like you're not hiding the truth. You are saying what the ingredients are, and if somebody's curious, they can ask. But
Yeah, I mean, we have one of the items is meat haters instead of meat lovers. So that usually gets people. They're like, "Oh, what is meat haters?" And we're like, "Oh, it has pepperoni, sausage, and bacon." And they're like, "Oh, I don't know. That sounds a little heavy. I'm gonna get the pepperoni."
that's very funny.
It's been funny, and then yeah, I mean, sometimes I have a beer or two at the festivals. You know, at the end of the night, and I'll stand by the booth and. My partners don't like that because I'm like shouting out liars to them as people are coming up to the booth, and I'm like, they're liars. And they're like, what? And I'm like, they're lying to you. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, it's vegan. And they're like, yeah, right, okay, thanks. And they're like, this guy's crazy. And I'm just like, okay. It's been fun.
I do something similar. When somebody is about to eat something vegan, I always say, careful, it's vegan.
Yeah.
Just to freak them out a little bit. I do it when they eat bananas often. Thank you. All right, back to y'all. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the state of what's going on. We've talked about some ways to address it. I think it shouldn't be on companies to educate the market on what the word vegan means. I've been asked like, oh, can you not eat certain vegetables? Like, there's a lot of confusion. And the funniest part too is like in the beauty industry, the word vegan is like a rite of passage. It's usually very big on the front. So it's very funny. People want vegan for on the body, but not necessarily in the body. So there's a conversation to be had there too. But I think for food in general, it shouldn't be the main value proposition. It should be delicious. So I definitely agree with that. Nick, do you want to talk a little bit about your next project that you're working on right now?
Yeah, we're doing business in LA is tough. Nothing to do with being plant-based or vegan. It's opening a restaurant, the process, the permits, understanding the city and the codes, raising money. Those are all hard for anyone in any business, and I think it's been a tougher 6 months because we've lost some notable restaurants in the vegan space. So in terms of like investing or putting money and energy into something that you just read something about Matthew Kenny or Molly or one of those things, and then you get a call from me and I'm like, hey, vegan restaurant. And they're just like, I'll call you next week. But people say all the time, oh, there's so many vegan restaurants that are going out of business. It's the same amount of regular business, non-vegan businesses are going out of business too. I think it's just we feel it because we don't have as many. And so it feels like this thing is crumbling around us, and it can't sustain itself. And most of I think Maggie probably more than others, like the restaurant boom that we had in 2019 was crazy. I mean, fall of 2019, there was probably 100% more vegan businesses than there is today. Burgers, this, that, you name it, there was a vegan business, and it looked like we had turned the corner and this thing was happening, and it's still happening. It's just, I think what we've switched from, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, is I don't think the core has really grown in terms of us here. Like, there's still the same amount of 100% vegan. Like, you make a decision of, am I going to get that car because the seats are leather and I got to make a different decision here, or those tennis shoes, I'm not going to get those. Like, that group, I don't know how much that group has grown. I think the next ring of flexitarian has grown a lot, And I think that's a really important space for all of us to play in and grow and make money on, because it's hard to commit in anything in life to 100%. But so I know I got off track, but I think that's an important thing to think about, that the flexitarian space has grown hundreds of %, whereas I think the core is really kind of stayed the same. And then like I was saying, businesses is tough, and raising money for business, and being a vegan business, there's only a certain amount of people that you can call and have that conversation with. But I think the restaurant in Silver Lake, the old Little Pine, that I'm working on with Billy and Phineas involved as well, and some other partners. I think we're back on track and a couple months away on that project. But we've definitely been held up by financing and permitting. And nobody. It's hard when you have a half-finished restaurant. It's a really tough place, and in any business, when you stall and you don't have momentum, it is really hard. And I think most of us have always had momentum, and I think the pandemic came in and showed us what it's like to be stalled out, and to get back on the bike and get that wheel turning again takes a little bit of time.
Zan, can you talk a little bit about your decision to open up in Los Angeles? I think you did something that a lot of people should do but don't, which is have one, main store, grow it over many years, and then move on. I know a lot of entrepreneurs want to sort of go global, day two, but I think, if I understand correctly, this is your second official location.
It is, and in addition to people going global immediately, sometimes even if you just want to expand, they'll do like a few restaurants, particularly in New York City, because it's such a dense geographic region. A few restaurants, you have a couple in Brooklyn, Manhattan, several in Manhattan. And we thought about it, and we just didn't think it would be the best strategy for our product. One, because we're also involved in manufacturing, because I mentioned earlier that we create our own proprietary formula, so we weren't buying a mix from. It wasn't like a B2B scenario like we were creating. So we're like, if we want to really push this product, and we want to take advantage of this gap in the market, we need to think about being in strategic locations that work for us. So New York City was great. Obviously this was before the pandemic hit, but we thought about how many people step foot in the city throughout the year from all over. So it was a great way for people to come in, test the product, and to spread the message. Another thing is, because we're such a tiny business, we don't have those huge ad dollars that are available to more established organizations, so we rely heavily on social media. And what helps push our social media footprint are people coming into the store and trying the product and videoing and sharing with other people they know. And partly because of social media, we get a lot of requests from people around the globe, like, please open here, we don't have something like this. And we got a lot from LA. We also know that LA has such a vibrant plant-based community, so we thought it was great. We were thinking about seasonality. I mean, New York, people go out all times of the year in New York City, but we were selling ice cream, and you don't get too many customers when it is 5 degrees outside saying I feel like ice cream cone today. So we thought about the great year-round weather here. So those are all pieces that played into our decision to come to Los Angeles. But as Nic said, it's sometimes you have a plan and it's delayed. It took a while for us to get here. We thought we were going to open sooner than we actually did. Part of it is capital, financing. My sister and I also talk about not just capital in terms of dollars, but social capital. If you don't have the network, or again, it was my sister and I, we didn't have this network of people who are go here for your supply chain, or go here for somebody if you're having this issue, as Nic said, permitting. It's just figuring all that yourself, and that could really stall the process. Sorry, your initial question was? why do we open up in LA? So that is why.
I thought it was interesting that you, in terms of expansion, it wasn't just the stores, right? Because you were an oat-based ice cream shop, but you're also doing you decide, okay, we're not going to open a new store, but maybe we're going to expand our line.
So as I mentioned,
Please.
I mentioned we've expanded into bakery items, so cookies, croissants, cakes, because you really have to think about what's going to sustain your business. And although ice cream is great and is wonderful, it is a seasonal product, particularly if you're placed in the Northeast. We also delved into shipping. We did it sooner than we expected. We did it in 2020, and that was really just a matter of survival. It's like I don't know if any of you guys were like in New York City or around New York City during the pandemic, but there was this mass exodus of people. The streets were bare, and then people were concerned about, just staying alive. It's like we know a lot more about COVID now, but if you think about the information that was available late March, early April, going into summer 2020, people were like, I can't stand near you. Could you cough on me? I could die. And then there were really scores of people dying from this in New York City. It was just horrendous, actually. So in addition to trying to think about keeping your family safe, your team safe, and on top of that, trying to figure out, how can I just sustain a business and grow a business? So we decided to go into shipping then. So now we have shipping. And thank you, Nick, for giving me the opportunity to talk more about it. Introducing other plant-based items, so our baked goods.
The creme brulee croissant, highly recommend. It's so good.
Thank you.
I think for Monty's, our kiss of death was expanding the menu. Like we saw so many vegan burger places. Once you introduce the burrito, it's over. Like it just was like, oh, they went to the burrito. like there's only a month left, and so trying to stay core to that menu for Monty's, because it was Monty's is more of a brand, and again, we have a good burger and the fries and tots are good and the shake's good. It's not the greatest you've ever had, but the brand is strong, and so keeping the brand in place with the look, the feel, and then the brand is the simple menu for Monty's. That was always a big thing, and there was many days where we were like, oh, should we go and try this? And then we did the chicken sandwich, which I think was just a natural space to kind of move. But keeping that menu kind of core has been important to Monty's.
I get an email probably once a week about somebody wanting to start or save a restaurant. Any advice?
They want to save a restaurant, or they want you to save the restaurant?
Save a restaurant,
like they all have a restaurant and they're trying to save it, or they want to start a restaurant. And
saving a restaurant is like you're not really good at swimming, but you went swimming, and then people are throwing things at you while you're trying to swim, and you're like, I just need more help, and they're like, cool, here's like 5 other things to hold while you're trying to not swim. It's just I mean, I experienced this. I am dealing with it now in my own life. Like, you make when you're super passionate about something like a restaurant, where it's eating and food and people and smiles and all those things that you see in your restaurant, it makes you feel so good. Like when that little kid is just like, Mommy, this is the best I've ever had. And so you get clouded and you make, like I love Nic's, and people love Nic's, and I love that pizza, and I love this and that, and you're just like, I gotta figure out a way to keep giving that to you. And you should only save a restaurant that is worth saving, and that's a really hard thing to figure out. Like, you need very smart financial people, and I don't want to say attorneys, but I think you need a team if you're in that position to make that decision. I don't think you can do it based on like, I really love this, I'm passionate. I know people love Nic's, I gotta do whatever it takes to keep this restaurant open. And as many of you witnessed, we closed Nic's and then I ended up talking to the landlord and we opened up for another 7 months. Probably not the best idea business-wise. It felt great to post that. It felt great for people to come back in the restaurant, but that's not a sound business decision. Restaurants that do well because they have the right mix of things. The demand, it's good, people like it, there's good business behind it. We deal with really big rents here in LA, and when you're not hitting your numbers, rent, labor, food costs, they just start yelling at you, and then you're like, oh, I can do one more month, I can just push this or push that, and it's like swimming and having people throw things on top of you, and you're just like, I'm drowning, and they're like, here, cool, take that. So I don't know, that's my view. I think if you want to start a restaurant, there's probably not a better time. I know I said all of that, but like, jump right in, because we've had our moment of down. I feel strongly that things are turning around, and the reason that a lot of those restaurants closed is they had tremendous debt from COVID, whether that was rent or government loans or really bad advances or whatever those loans are called. There's just like a lot of debt out there, and no matter how well that restaurant was doing, I mean, if you went by Nic's, it was full. You couldn't get a table. But we were dealing with something that happened a couple of years ago, and so I think if you're a new business and you're smart and you get the right lease and you have the right idea, I think there's no better time than right now.
So, if somebody wants to start a restaurant, I wouldn't discourage them because I'm doing it. And like I said, I love seeing the process of building. So if other people are interested in that, I want to be as encouraging as possible, while also being realistic. I think in terms of technology, like the technological gains, and about like some things are maybe a bit easier just because dealing with logistics, you can like use a certain software and handling a portion of your business. So I agree with Nic. Now it seems like in terms of technological advances, an even better time to start a restaurant. As I mentioned before, social media, being able to reach like this huge audience for essentially free. Yes, you could pay for ads. We haven't paid for ads yet. Our growth has been organic, and this has been so crucial for us. And then you can have like an influencer come in, and some will expect payment and others won't, because it's just an exchange of like a food item. So that has been like wonderful for our growth. I would say really start small, unless you have unlimited funds. And some people do, I guess. But start small and really like hone in on your product. Make sure your product is good. Nic mentioned branding. Make sure your branding is excellent. It's like if you come into our store and you see, it's like we brand. You see, I'm wearing my brand now. It's like, and if you come to our store, we're branding the sleeve for our ice cream cone, the cookie tube. We have canned water, and we're like, why should we sell canned water from another brand when it can have our name on it? So our brand is on our water. So we just want people to like keeping in mind Urban Dessert Lab or UDL, Urban Dessert Lab, Urban Dessert Lab. So when they're thinking about, oh, I'm hungry, what can I try? Like this pops into their head, or I have this event. Who's able to cater it? They think about their brands, and I think it's a great time to open a restaurant. If you start slow, also make sure you have like a good support system, because like as Nic said, the ebbs and flows, and sometimes you get like those wins and it can be extremely exhilarating, And then, but those losses can be devastating. And if you have a support system, and that doesn't mean they co-sign everything you want to do. A support system is somebody who will check you and say, this makes sense from like a financial perspective, a legal perspective, a marketing perspective, or they'll say, this is not where you want to enter in at the moment. Either they'll say it's a bad idea overall, or maybe this is just not the timing. So if you have those people who can be honest with you, sometimes it's hard to find those people because you got this gleam in your eye and this dream. You're like, oh, I have this best product and I'm going to expand and take over the world. And I'm gonna lie, I still have that dream and gleam. I think UDL can be a global brand, but I do need somebody in my corner to say, Zan, not today, or slow it down. Because if you go too fast, we see it all the time. Like, it's particularly in the restaurant space, people crash and burn. And they had like a great opening or great beginning, and you don't want to be in that space, and I don't want to be in that space. So making sure you have people who are very honest with you.
Thank you. That was solid advice from both of you. How much, speaking of branding, how much are you paying Monty the dog? What's that deal look like?
Monty pays me. He's the CEO. So I don't know how much he makes, but he lives a really nice lifestyle. He's always getting baths and his haircut. And he's like at a music festival all the time, and like, it's crazy.
He seems quite vain. He's all over the posters.
Yeah, I mean, he likes to. I mean, I just drove down Rose, and there's a giant like right in my face. I'm like, okay, I got it. I work for you. I know what's happening.
Did you at least get to take the picture?
I took a picture of it. Yeah.
So, a question I've been wanting to ask you, and maybe a lot of people here, but like, when is or can a Coachella go vegan?
Never.
Rosie?
Well, I went to Coachella for many years, and there's I don't know how many booths there were. There's a lot of booths at Coachella, but as a vegan, you're like, okay, what am I going to eat? And there was there was only one raw vegan. It was raw and vegan. It was called 118 Degrees, and it was like I think it was out in the Inland Empire or desert. And in the valley. Oh, okay. Well, yeah. And it was coconuts, and then if you were vegan a long time ago and ate raw, there was that coconut meat sandwich. I miss it for some reason. But it was like very, not even 1.0. It was like, and the problem is, candidly, is as we all know, you can only have so many coconuts throughout a weekend. And so by the third day, it's just like, I can't have another coconut. So I was friends with the producer, Paul, who started Coachella. And I was coming off of Sunset Strip Music Festival, doing that, and then also Eat, Drink, Vegan. And I just had said that there was an opportunity here to do Coachella differently. And I wasn't just thinking vegan, although I was completely, selfish and knew what my goal was. But it was like, hey, there's room for a lot of restaurants here at Coachella. And before it was very much like fair food, burritos, tacos, pizza, like no names. And he over a couple of months, he asked me if I wanted to become the culinary director for Coachella, and I said, yeah, I'd love to do that because I have an ultimate plan. And so slowly, we got, we went 10% the first year. The next year was 20% vegan. I think a couple of years ago, we got all the way up to 30% of the vendors were vegan, and we pretty much stayed at that. And so, that's what we all need to kind of fight for. 100% is I'm not saying we can't have that in our heart and our mind, but we also have to know how awesome 30% is, and to know that any of us could go to Coachella and have way more food that we can ever eat, and have Slutty Vegan come out from the East Coast, or Senna come from our backyard, or Monty's be there, or whatever Urban Dessert Lab, I think is all we could ask for, and we have the opportunity to share it with our friends. And if we did Cruel World, so there's a festival called Cruel World that we do at Pasadena, and because Morrissey was the headliner the first year and Susie was the headliner the second year, both of them are vegetarian, that the whole festival had to be vegetarian. The amount of negative feedback that came because of the food, it wasn't helpful to the festival, it wasn't helpful to the vegan lifestyle, plant-based eating. It ended up being a negative. And then this year, we didn't have, Duran Duran was the headliner and there was no food restriction, so we just had whatever food, and vegan food outsold everything else.
At Cruel World?
At Cruel World, yeah. So, I mean, being so finite in 100% and trying to get that can also be a negative, and, you just have to find that right percentage.
I think it's I think it's interesting because a lot of these festivals are taking sustainability more seriously, but I'm curious how much of a dent they're going to make if they're not going to touch food.
I work heavily on this with the sustainability team at the festivals, and we don't have plastic, single-use plastic water bottles anymore at Coachella. Aluminum's not the best thing, but we have a good program, and we gather as much of it as possible. But moving away from single plastic, compostable, all the vendors have to do compostable. We're composting in the back. We're sorting our own trash. We're doing stuff with solar power, light towers, taking last year's merch and cutting it up and resewing it. So there's so much in the festival space. Festivals are not sustainable, bringing tens of thousands of people to one location and driving, flying, trucks, food, all of it. It's not a sustainable space. You can definitely do a lot in that space. And people think of food as the last thing. They're like, cool, we're gonna do all this work and then we're gonna have 20 hamburger places. And so I think whatever my influence has been being vegan on our company has definitely helped in understanding food, and there's a vegan presence at all Golden Voice festivals now. So you just have to nicely keep putting it out there. Just put it out there, put it out there, put it out there. People will pick it up. You can't ignore it. You can't ignore things that are delicious, and you can't ignore consistency.
Did vegan food outsell at Coachella as well?
No, but there's a ton of plant-based options at Coachella, and they do well. I mean, Senna crushes. Like, they do really well. Monty's does really well. I don't know if they're vegan or not, but Forever Pie does this pizza, and they did really well.
I hear they have this crazy guy.
Yeah, that's pizza.
Question for you: what does success look like with Urban Dessert Lab? What's the goal?
Short answer: expansion, of course, sustainable expansion. I don't know if this is a good character trait, but when people tell you this won't work, and that sounds like, oh, that piques my interest. So before we even started, a lot of people are like, people don't want plant-based ice cream, they want dairy. People really tell us this when we were trying to figure out our formula. We were like, they're not going to want this. And we know that's false. What we often hear also is like, okay, so like New York and LA, yeah, those are different communities, but this won't work in the Midwest, right? It's like the farmers do not want this product. It's like, and like this absolutely could flourish in the Midwest. So success for us, expanding into those, as we call them, like those deserts, those vegan deserts. I like the idea of expanding beyond that, because when people come to like New York store and they're like, we can't find this in Oklahoma or Florida, or even one of the biggest complaints is like you have somebody come over from Europe and with excellent pastry programs and they're like, wow, like this is excellent. So I can't pinpoint exactly where, because I think you have to be cognizant of your environment and the market and how things change throughout the years, but definitely expanding the retail footprint, our shipping program, and getting more into, we do catering and activations, and that has gone well for us, so expanding that as well so that people are more aware of our brand. We're still very small, and even though sometimes it seems like we have like a nice social media following, and but even when we're here, and we've been here since February, people are like, I had no idea like you guys were in LA. Eric had mentioned, Eric had mentioned, like, I've been to your New York store, and I had no idea you guys were here. So making sure that our presence is known and welcome, that's what success looks like.
Awesome. Yeah, we got to get the word out. Last question for me, and then we'll take some from the audience, if that's okay. If you weren't building what you're building right now, what would you be doing? What's a shiny object that you've said no to because of what you're doing that you would be pursuing otherwise?
Travel. And not that I said no to it, but I would definitely do more of it, just because it's such to be able to like read about a location and experience it, and experience the culture and the food and the community, like that's always very exciting to me. So I would travel more, and not because of Urban Dessert Lab. I would travel for pleasure. It's great to travel for Urban Dessert Lab too, but I want to travel and not have people like saying like answer this email or appear here, or make sure that you have electricity at this event so that your cookies can be warm. It's like I just want to have fun and create my own schedule. So if anybody has any ideas on how to accomplish that, because even if I wasn't doing Urban Dessert Lab, I'm like, how do people accomplish that for themselves? Just so like, maybe a little travel lifestyle blogger. I don't know.
Love it.
Yeah.
My wife's trying to start that blog. I'm gonna send it to you. She's obsessed with points. Just because you have a business and you buy so many things, you could be racking up those points and traveling for free. Yeah, you do.
Nick can send you a referral code.
Shiny things. More time. I don't know, I like hotels. I like travel. I think traveling as a vegan is super fun. I think that's sometimes you get somewhere and you need something to like, I'm gonna go see these museums, but food tourism is so fun. And then specifically, as a vegan, I just like going to Portland 10 years ago was, my wife and I, we started at 7:30 and got coffee at this place, and then we went and got a pastry at this place, and then we got some more coffee, and then we went to the early lunch, and then, we were really hurting at the end of the day, but it just was so fun. It's just like a different way to explore. I think sometimes travel is, the food wasn't part of it. It was kind of like, we have to eat while we go do all these things, and I think there's a lot of fun in that space. But I like hotels. I have had a lot of opportunities come for non-vegan businesses. I struggle with that. They're really great, and I've thought like, maybe I'll just take profit from the vegan menu items on the menu. But I do think we're seeing more and more I mean, I see them through Maggie mostly because she gets to travel too much. But
Yeah,
there
that's
are
how you do it.
vegan hotels. Sounds, plant-based hotels. Sounds really fun.
We have a vegan hotel for sale, actually. You should talk to Gabby afterwards. So, all right, we're going to open it up for questions. Bruce over here is going to pass around the mic if anybody has a question for our panelists, or me.
Guys, thank you so much for being here, and Noah for orchestrating everything. Thank you. As an early stage CPG brand, how did you identify your early beachhead, that early target audience that adored your product, became consistent customers? How did you test it? How did you identify it? How did you collect data on it?
You want me or which one? Both? Monty's was, it happened literally so fast that we couldn't even keep up. I mean, the first Monty's milkshakes was someone driving around to every Trader Joe's to buy the Trader Joe's vanilla plant-based ice cream, and we were making deals with managers at each store to pick up on a certain day, and then we were cutting them into it was crazy. And then we tried some other brand, and I don't know, you just Yelp is such a horrible place to live. But it's also like they're telling you exactly what you need to know. Like, it's right there. Like, service was shitty. No, it wasn't. Oh, was it? I need to check the cameras, or I need to talk to the manager. So Yelp actually in the restaurant space helped us a lot, because it was like, your burgers suck, or they're great, or I didn't like the ice cream, or I didn't, the fries were too salty, or sometimes people don't like to give you feedback other than, oh my god, this is incredible, which isn't really helpful. It's nice, it feels good, but it's not the most helpful feedback. Forums, Yelp, social, we live in a place where people can let you know how they feel about something, and you have to listen. Like, it's right there. They're telling you, everything. We see it on other people's restaurants. I mean, we're seeing it at a couple restaurants right now. They're like telling you, don't do that. And it's like, okay, well then who is your audience? If you're not listening to the people that are speaking to you and telling you what they want and what they don't want, I'm not sure who you think you're going to sell your product to. So I think listening to real-time feedback is super important.
I wholeheartedly agree. Sometimes the feedback can be rude, but you can't really ignore it, and you just take what you can to make your product and your business or your space better. For us also, even in thinking about like, oh, let's focus on ice cream and expanding into other plant-based products. I briefly mentioned this before, but focusing on like nostalgic foods, like figure out like vegan and plant-based, like CPs. What sells well? And are there good plant-based options in that space? So in 2019, of course, there's plant-based ice cream, but we just thought it wasn't very good, so we're like, we could focus on that. The dairy options have gotten better, and now we're doing cookies, and as I mentioned, cookies and cakes and croissants and other plant-based items. And even if there are good plant-based options out there, it's like, how can we focus on an innovative spin on that option? So it's just really constantly, I think, thinking about your product and how it can resonate with individuals, not just the taste, but like I mentioned before, like texture, look. You think about like the thought of like scooping into the ice cream and having different layers of product. Like we developed like this line and layer technique, because we noticed that like even if you go to a regular ice cream shop, they often put the ice cream in a cup and then put the toppings on it. And when you think about like your eating experience being pleasurable, it's like, okay, I finished off with the ice cream, the toppings are gone. Now I just left with plain ice cream. I'm like, there must be a better way to do that. And it's just very simple, and we call it like the line and layer technique. It's like line your toppings first on the bottom, and then your ice cream, and then layer it on top. And I think just thinking about like small things, so like ice cream is not anything new, or like plant-based option burgers, so we focus on that. And we're like, if we want to be able to compete in this space, we can't just think about, oh, we're a good plant-based ice cream brand. We got to think about like Ben & Jerry's and Unilever's and Nestle's, and how can we compete with them? How can we get people coming back to us? I think it's just thinking not just about like taste and a plant-based option, but hitting those other marks for your product: texture, taste, aesthetic, and then your customers will spread the word for you.
Yeah. I would just add that I would start by making the product you want to make, and then getting it to the best place it can be, and then kind of reverse engineering in terms of cost and pulling it back, and because then you know what you're going for. I think if you start with, I want to make a $5 item, and then you're like, it tastes like it's $5, you know, instead of, I want to make the best thing ever, and then, oh, I got to figure out how to make this thing $5. I think it's probably important.
Next question.
Yeah. Mine's not a question, but I just wanted to shout out both of you. I feel like both of your brands, or multiple brands, do a really good job of being mainstream and not just living in the vegan community. And for those of you who don't know, Urban Dessert Lab just won one of ESPN's Black Business, so I wanted to shout that out. So that's gonna be aired. It hasn't aired yet. It's during the NBA Finals.
Yeah, it was actually on, what was the last game? Like,
Last night.
yeah, the Celtics were almost out, so it aired last night.
Yeah, so it's awesome. I mean, it's like mainstream as you can get right there. And so I feel like when people are thinking about starting brands, like think how these two entrepreneurs think, and just like go, you know, you have to like kind of go big with your ideas and get outside of the community. That's just my input.
My input would be, Maggie is so real and puts her feelings out there and is true and honest, and I'm always like, damn, I could be better. So thank you.
Thanks.
Hello. I have a two-part question. They're both point to be different. The first one is about flexitarian, and you know, I know in a lot of like vegan and vegetarian communities, people that there's a lot of values around that. But you don't want to isolate anybody, and you want to include everybody. I think. Do you have kind of thoughts around why it basically went from, you know, there's not a place that does vegetarian and vegan. It's either like vegan or nothing. Like I feel like that middle kind of ground when you're talking about vegetarian, sometimes vegetarian's a little bit easier to approach. And is it just because it's harder marketing because you're not like one thing or the other? How come restaurants are not more like kind of considering both of those options?
Yeah.
Or why didn't you?
I thought Kaya did a good job. Like, they try to position themselves as they're a vegan restaurant that serves meat, which I know is hard for some of us to wrap our heads around, but I appreciate it. And I went there, and I think they've gotten worse since they merged with the other company, but it was an interesting play to, if you're going to order it, it's going to come vegan, but if you want to add chicken, you can, or you want to add dairy cheese, you can. They've moved away from that a little bit. I think the Butcher's Daughter is like would they be a vegetarian restaurant? I think they do okay. You know, we don't want to go to a non-vegan restaurant. Non-vegans don't want to go to a vegan restaurant, so there's like this little space in the middle that's missing out. True Foods, I think, is another restaurant that has straddled that line well. I mean, there's some out there. It's just we're passionate about our food. You know, us humans are passionate, and sometimes you think you're missing out if you're going to go to a vegetarian restaurant. You know, I always look at I call it the fourth person at the table. That's who I always try to take care of. And when we open Nic's, we are not going to have any cheese that's from another company. We're not going to have any Impossible meat. We're not going to have any of these things. And what happened is the fourth person at the table was like, "There's nothing on this menu for me." And so 6 months into Nic's, we were in a horrible place. Like, it was going to close. And we did the Nic's burger, which ended up becoming the number one item on our menu, the chicken sandwich and different things. But the Nic's pizza, because that's what that person wanted. Like, the other three people were cool eating this beautiful whole food, vegetables, and then that fourth person was like, "I don't want to come here, I don't want to go there." So we had to appeal to that, and I think that probably a lot of restaurants fall into, because if that fourth person doesn't want to go, they're all going to go somewhere else.
And just the second part to that question, like both of you, or just in general, I think a lot of vegan products that come onto the market always try to imitate, or, not imitate is the right word, but like you talked about nostalgia earlier, like having those flavors of things that you're used to, but now having the vegan option to that. And then I feel like every menu in Santa Monica has buffalo, cauliflower, and why isn't there more branching out to maybe other types of food that is not as nostalgic, it's just harder to sell, people don't know it? Is it easier as a business to survive because you're tapping into nostalgia? Like, it would be nice.
Just go quickly and then turn it over. Americans eat burgers, pizza, tacos, ice cream, full stop. So, if your restaurant is about trying to bring in the mainstream, and you got to start with those products, and then, I like that. And branch out. But it's shown over and over. I mean, this is what they want. I mean, we can't think of a vegan restaurant that's done well that doesn't have those items that are. I'm not saying there's not great Thai restaurants and Indian restaurants, but if it's like an American restaurant or a kind of contemporary restaurant, I feel like it hits those things.
I agree. I think it just comes down to what sells well. I mean, that's what we look at. Aside from, it needs to be something we enjoy, and our family and our friends and our team when they're tasting it. If you want to be around for more than a year or two, you got to figure out what's sustainable, and to be sustainable, you have to make money. So, as Nic's saying, it's like when you look at the businesses that are making money and the food that people are making repeat purchases of, it's going to be like those mainstays: pizza, fries, burgers, ice cream. Give another one. Nick mentioned, like,
You can just repeat those again.
yeah, like the fair food, and that's why it is fair food. Is like people are going to hot dogs. People are going to come back for that. So hopefully we're moving more towards an era where people have the funding to like delve into other recipes and formulas, so that we're not stuck with like those popular foods. But it just requires money and resources to do that. So I think that's why people are shying away from it when just starting a vegan restaurant.
It's also a gateway. It's a little bit of a gateway to eating healthier, or like the easiest way to get someone to try something plant-based is to give them a burger. like, you know, it's like, go to Monty's and you give them a burger and they're like, oh, if vegan food was like this, I could eat it all the time, right? And so, you know, the next thing you give them is pizza, and then you get done with that, and then you're like, here's a quinoa bowl, and they're like, oh, I've never had anything like that before. I don't know if I like that. I'm going back to the burger. So, but you know, like Nick's had so many different things on the menu. Nick's burger was number 1, and the OG pizza was number 2. So.
One last question. Make it good. Hank.
Really good. Oh man. Everyone's got to check out Hank's Miracle Berries. Good guy. My question is, I'm really interested in social media, and you guys have huge followings. I know a lot of businesses can monetize like $1, 50 cents, $2 per follower per month. And I guess I'm wondering on the restaurant side of things, how you guys have either what you guys are currently doing to monetize your social media to sort of supplement the really tough restaurant margins, or if you have explored that and it hasn't, you know, yeah, just curious how you're thinking through that.
Sounds like we're hanging out after this. Because I don't think either of us know how to do that. We're just trying to put content that looks interesting and makes people laugh and makes them share it, and then someone clicks on the profile and they're like, well, what's this dog? And they're selling burgers, and then that's a win for us. I think anything, and we do run ads. I mean, we have 4 stores, so we have budget. Obviously, we have billboards too, but we think just using social as a way to it's entertainment. I think at this point. I mean, I think we've all seen the TikToks and the reels about why Red Bull or this company doesn't have their product on their page. I think that's hard when you're small. You got to continue to show people what you have, but I would say that there's been a huge shift in Monty's to more lifestyle marketing, and just this is who we are, this is who eats Monty's, but I wouldn't know how to monetize each follower.
Sorry, I don't have anything to add on that front. I can tell you what we do with our social media, which is, I touched on it a little bit more about the aesthetics of our food. We focus a lot on food, what we call food action shots. So scooping the ice cream and you see the sauce drizzling out, and people like literally eat that stuff up. It's like one of the main things we focus on is that people eat with their eyes first. It could also help in making up like almost like a deficit you might experience when people are saying like, wait, plant-based, what, vegan? No, vegan food is disgusting, or I don't want vegan, or I'm not interested in that. But when they see it and they're like, oh no, that looks good, and you're not thinking about, oh, this is dairy free, you're like, that looks tasty, I want it. And we see it driving people to our stores, because when they come in, they don't know the names of the products. They'll pull out their phone and they'll say, I want this, or can you tell me what this is? Can you please make this for me? So I think it's what's worked for us. And it took a while to figure out what did work, and we've gone viral a couple of times, but I wish I could tell you exactly like steps A, B, and C on how to achieve that. One of our first viral videos was a strawberry shortcake cone, and I don't know, that wasn't the first time we had posted it. I don't know why that post was popular, but the food action shots have been really beneficial for us. So yeah, it's just appealing to people like that eat with your eyes first philosophy. I wish I knew more about monetizing our followers, because like I said, that sounds like something I should be delving into. So
Just in general, I mean, we we talk about, people say vegan food's disgusting. We don't want to put vegan on the front of our buildings. Like, we're still a very small group, and we are still at the beginning of this. You know, even me being vegan for 25 years, and you know, Monty's is 5 years old. Before there wasn't a recognizable vegan burger brand before 5 years ago. Now you have, you know, maybe 3 or 4. I mean, there was not a recognizable vegan ice cream brand. So, I mean, we just have to remember in the big picture how early stage we are in all of this, and we should never be, you know, swayed by like, this isn't going to work. It's totally going to work. It's going to take a long time. It's going to take a couple mad cows, you know, some bird flus. And sadly, I mean, that's, you know, I tell my partners at Monty's, I'm like, it's coming. Like, I mean, they're getting sick, you know, like the chickens are getting sick. And that's the only time we've seen major change is a movie came out and it hit all in the right way, and we had a nice shift, a 0.000001 shift, and we were like, wow, things have really changed. So, you know, just remember where we are. We're at the beginning, and everyone's doing good work here, and we're asking the right questions, and we're doing things with our heart, and you know, it will make a difference in the end, and we'll look back in 25 years, and I'm sure the landscape will be very different.
Amen. Very nicely wrapped up. Thank you so much for being here with us today, both Zan and Nic. Thank you so much. And thank you for everybody who made it out. If we can just get a picture together real quick, and then you're invited to hang. Please enjoy the food. And yeah, if you want to learn more about their businesses, follow them on Instagram, and check out Entrepreneur and Earth Pass too. Thank you.